Hello everybody and welcome back to another World Cup review. Today I'm going to be reviewing 3 games, 3 including Fiji versus Uruguay, England versus USA and Italy versus Canada. So let's get straight into it. So the first game I'm reviewing is Fiji versus Uruguay, and yes, everybody, we have had our first shock of the tournament. Uruguay, who no one gave an inch coming into this tournament, thought they'd lose all their games, and to be honest, I did too, and I did not see this one coming. Fiji were well and truly stunned. Uruguay, well, they were just, it was honestly deserved. They were the best team on the day, and it was brilliant for them, to be honest, because the emotion they showed at the end of that game just shows what just one win in the World Cup means to teams like Uruguay. It's fantastic to see, and this is why you want shocks in the World Cup. You want to see that emotion in the final whistle, and we saw that in abundance from Uruguay. And I felt when they got in the lead, and they were in the lead at half time, I think that they knew that this was their opportunity. I think they knew that they wouldn't really get many opportunities, maybe especially not against Australia and Wales, and probably not against Georgia. They knew that this was their opportunity and they had to seize it. And they did brilliantly. They shut Fiji out. And to be honest, Fiji were the masters of their own downfall in the game, to be honest. They made so many mistakes, and they kept with the same tactics which Uruguay managed to cope with. We know that Fiji are the running team that they are. They like to play from deep and all that, and it just didn't work. They were just trying to play the same way throughout the game, and for me they need to try to adapt to the game when it changes, when the pace changes, or you just need to adapt to your game against certain teams, and they needed to do that against Uruguay. Of course they wouldn't know what Uruguay are like coming into the game, but the way Uruguay managed to cope with Fiji and the way they managed to actually get through them quite easily as well, felt like Fiji needed to change their game at half time, but they just didn't. They just didn't. And they seemed pretty arrogant as well. They seemed like they were coming into this game thinking, oh, we're going to win it, we've made 12 changes, we're going to win this game easily, we'll just run them ragged and show everyone how good we are at attacking, and that just didn't happen. And I'm so glad Uruguay won that game, to be honest, because I was starting to think that this World Cup was going to be full of near misses for the minnow sides. But it wasn't, and it was brilliant from Uruguay, and they capitalised on every error that Fiji made. Quite a few of the tries, I think all 3 of them actually, came from drop ball in the first half from Fiji's point of view. And that first try from Ratata was absolutely brilliant. They were really good at just jumping on that ball, getting it, clearing it up, and then counter-attacking from it. It's what they did brilliantly. In Fiji, to be honest, they kept dropping the ball, and as I said, they were the masters of their own downfall. They kept dropping the ball. Uruguay pounced on it quickly, reacted so quickly, and they scored the 3 tries from the mistakes on dropping the ball. And they know that will be why, and they'll have to try and change that for the next game. And another thing, and Fiji, they could have easily won this game. They lost 30 points to 27, but they could have won it. If Josh Matavesi kicked over those 2 easy penalties or conversions, I can't remember which ones they were, but if he kicked over those 2 easy kicks at goal, they could have won it, and we wouldn't be in this situation. But in all honesty, Uruguay deserved it. They showed desire, heart, patience, and they managed to stop everything Fiji were throwing at them in that second half, despite a late resurgence from them, and it was fantastic. Of course, Uruguay have Georgia next. If they can beat Georgia, they could re-qualify for the next World Cup, and that would be amazing for a team like Uruguay. They'd be so happy, and I'd love to see it, to be honest. But we'll see what happens. I think they could give a good fight to Georgia, and that would be a fantastic game to watch. Meanwhile for Fiji, they've had 2 games now. They played pretty well against the Aussies. Unfortunate to get a point from that, but they need to do better than they did against Uruguay. I feel like they were too arrogant, and they need to up their game and to win their next two, because they're under pressure now. They're pretty much out. They can't get to the quarters. They can't provide the shock that people thought they might, but they can re-qualify for the next tournament, and that's just going to have to be their aim for now. So yeah, we'll see how Fiji get on in the next games, and we'll see how Uruguay get on in the next game. But for now, it was a brilliant shock from Uruguay, and I'm happy that it happened because they deserved it. Uruguay with the win, 30 points to 27 against Fiji. Well deserved. The next game I'm going to review is Italy versus Canada. This one was an odd one because Italy started really well in this game. They went 17-0 up within the first 20 minutes. Thought Canada were just going to roll over, to be honest. It looked like that from the first 20 minutes. Italy were all over them. They were confident, much confident than they were in the Namibia game, which is good to see. But Canada came back into it, and they came back into it well, and they had opportunities, but their handling was awful. It was just the handling. The handling was not good enough. They had so many chances. They could have scored 5 tries in that space between the 20th minute and half time. They could have easily have scored 5 odd tries because Italy's defence wasn't brilliant, and they were attacking pretty well, Canada, but they just weren't producing that final ball that they needed to produce, and they were struggling on that part. And if you don't have a good attacking setup and good handling, you're not going to get anywhere. And they needed those tries, because if they would have scored the tries that they had the opportunities to in the first half, it would have been much closer. I mean, Italy only went in 17-0, and if Canada took their chances, it could have easily been 17-15 or something like that. Because Italy, as well as they started, they fell off the gas a bit towards the end of the first half, and it looked like they were almost laboured a bit. They were like, right, we've got the job done now, we're 17-0 up. But Canada should have taken their chances, and they didn't, and they ended up losing the game because of it, because they could have been in the game at half time. Instead they weren't, and they were always fighting, and then they ran out of fitness, and Italy managed to run in more tries. I can't remember how many they scored. They did get 42 points, Italy, and most of those points were scored in the first 20 and the last 20. That time in between is when Canada should have taken their chances, and they didn't. And unfortunately, they were 17-0 down. They ran out of fitness, and Italy ran in the tries. And I've got to say, Italy's forwards were brilliant. Special mention to Jake Pellegrini. He was everywhere, and Bram Stain as well. Everywhere, the flankers and the second rowers, absolutely everywhere. They were all over the pitch, and it's good for Italy that these guys are coming into form. I mean, of course, it's only Canada, but they're coming into form at the right time, because they've got 2 massive games against New Zealand and South Africa, and they need those boys to perform, because they are some of their best players in those flanker areas, and they need them to perform, because they do have a chance of getting out of this group. Of course, they're top of the group at the moment on 10 points, so they do have a chance. And this confidence that they have from these opening 2 games, and the confidence that players have, and the way they're playing, they can take that into the South Africa game, which is their next game, and maybe shock them. You never know. But they've got to make sure they don't get complacent. They've got to make sure they don't play the same way they did against Canada and Namibia, because they're not as good. Of course, they're not as good as South Africa and New Zealand. And if you're going to play the same way against Canada and Namibia, which they didn't play brilliantly in either, I think they played better in the Canadian game, but if they play the same way, then they're not going to win. They need to change their tactics and just go completely different for the games, and just take the confidence and give it a good go. But yeah, back to the game. They played much better than they did against Namibia, and in the end, they fully deserved their win. They did the job in the first 20 minutes. They forced Canada into handling errors, and forced them to not score any tries. And yeah, it's good to see Canada get that try that they deserved, because they deserved a try, and you don't like seeing a team finish on a 0 on the scoreboard, so it's good that they got a try. But I think Italy would be very proud of not only their attacking performance, but their defensive performance as well, to only let Canada score that one try. They'll be very happy with that, especially when the defence was very leaky against a Namibia side who you wouldn't expect to score many tries. So Italy will be very happy with that performance. They're going up, they're getting better, and I think they're peaking. They could be peaking for this South Africa game, and we could have a shock on our hands. Still think South Africa win it, but we could have a shock on our hands. Meanwhile, for Canada, they have New Zealand next, of course. They're not going to win it, but if they finish off some of the chances that they could have had against Italy, they could have go into the game very confident. Instead, I don't think they will, because they played poorly. Their attack was off with the handling errors, and the defence was all over the place. So I can't really see them doing much against New Zealand, to be honest. I see it being a bit of a thrashing and a bit of a rollover from Canada, but I hope they give it a good go, and I hope they score some tries, because it's always good to see the Minnows get a couple of points against teams like New Zealand. But yeah, I don't see them doing anything. But yeah, it was a good game overall, and Italy fully deserved that 42-7 win that they got. And finally, on to the last game, England versus USA, which saw the first red card of the tournament from Quill, who got the first red card of the tournament. And I've got to say, before I get into the game, straight red, easy as said as done. I mean, shoulder into head, it seemed malicious, and there's nothing else to it. There's no mitigating factors. Farrell was upright, and a red card was the right decision from the ref, from Nick Berry, and that one was the right decision for me. Straight red. I think he's got a 3-week ban, so it's not a full World Cup ban, but a 3-week ban, looking like he will be out of the whole tournament, considering the pool stages finish in 3 weeks' time. So it's looking like he'll be out for the tournament, which is sad for him, of course, because they wouldn't want that. And for a team like USA, all their team will be relishing the World Cup again to play against bigger teams, and he's gone in harsh, bit of red missed, got a red, and now he's going to miss the rest of the tournament, which is really sad for him. But he made the mistake, and he got paid for it because it was a red. But anyway, into the game. And there's not much to say about this one really, apart from the fact that England were brilliant. They were much better than they were against Tonga, and it was mainly helped by the fact that USA's set piece was awful. They do say that you win games on set piece, and if your set piece isn't very good, you're not going to win the game. And USA, I don't think were ever going to win the game, but they could have come close. But their set piece was so bad that England just fed off it. They were getting penalties galore. They were stealing the balls from the lineouts. It was just a really bad showing from the scrum and from the lineouts from a USA point of view. And England scored most of their tries from those set-piece errors. They got penalties from the scrums, kicked it down the field, and their maul was absolutely destroying the USA forwards. And when you've got a devastating maul like that, why not use it? And they used it to effect, and they scored most of their tries from it. And that's what England want. They want that as a strong point. They've got that as a strong point. They can take that into the games against France and Argentina. I think France and Argentina will shape up to it more than USA did. They didn't cope with it very well, but I still think it's a very big strength for England, and they could really use it to their strengths and go in and dominate in them all. But yeah, for the whole game, England were dominant. USA were nowhere near. They were just not very good. I thought USA would provide a good showing. I thought they'd come up trumps and maybe do well in the game, but they were nowhere. They were absolutely nowhere, and it's quite sad to see. It's good they got the try at the end. As I said beforehand, you don't want to see anyone on 0, so I'm glad they got the try, but England just fully dominated them. There's not really much to say about it other than the fact that England dominated them and their backs were on form, forwards were on form, and England just overwhelmed the US, and that's all I can say to it, to be honest. England just dominated them and did what England do well, which is get it to the backs, running play, destroying teams in their mauls, and yeah, England fully deserved the win, and they're going to take massive confidence from that game because they didn't play brilliantly against Tonga, but this game they showed their full might, and it wasn't even their main side either, so you got to think these players that played against the US have really shown themselves and could get into the team for the game against Argentina and France, so we'll see if they do. They've really put their hands up in that display, and England will go into those two games with an abundance of confidence because they were outstanding, and that is how England have been playing recently in the warm-ups and in some of the games in the Six Nations. They were brilliant. So yeah, England are going to go into those games with confidence, and of course they top the group now, so that's going to give them confidence as well, and they're the ones that Argentina and France are chasing. So we'll see how they get on in the France and Argentina games, but I think they'll go into them with a lot of confidence. Meanwhile, for the US, it's tough for them. They have France next, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. If they play like that, then they're not going to beat the French. The French, of course, are unpredictable, so the US could spring a surprise, but this game's not going to give them a lot of confidence because they would have had confidence going into the game that they could play really well. People were thinking they could, and they just fell off, and they just rolled over, and it'll be interesting to see if they do bounce back. I hope they do. I hope they give France a good game, but it's not going to give them the brilliant amount of confidence that they want. But we'll see how they get on against France. Overall, very good game. England deserved the victory, and they will go into their next few games with a lot of confidence. So yeah, that is my review of those 3 games. Comment down below what you thought on the 3 games and what you thought on the Uruguay-Fiji game most of all, and did you think that was a red card from the USA player? Put that in the comments down below. Please give a like and subscribe. Thanks everyone for watching. See you in a bit.